I'm Dave.
And I'm Rob.
We've got the same dad.
But we did not meet until I was 16 years old.
And I was so much older. So, this is the podcast where
we make up for lost memories, lost time, and lost childhood
by sharing an album that
your
brother
should
know. Hello, everybody. Good morning, good afternoon, good night, wherever you are in the world. This month, we are on Your Brother Should Know going to be looking at Scott Walker, the enigma, the man, the myth that is Scott Walker, specifically Scott Walker 2. So, first question, Rob. When I said, Scott Walker, and you went, you obviously kind of had heard of him a little bit. What did you know, think, feel about Scott Walker before this podcast?
Honestly, I felt really guilty and stupid because I remember when I was about 19 or 20 years old, and for the first time I was going to cut off my ponytail, my rock and roll hair, my hippie hair that I'd worn around backpacking around China and Southeast Asia. I was a hippie rocker, all right? And I think midway through first year, I noticed I was not getting laid. I just was not. And I concluded...
and I wonder if there's a direct kind of XY axis graph around men with ponytails and getting laid. Men with ponytails, please write in.
So I decided to get it cut. And I felt that because
yes.
you don't really get a haircut if you've got long hair. You just grow it for at least a year. So I had to get it cut. So I found like a hipster hairdresser in the trendy area.
Nice.
Which probably charged me about 15 quid. And I was walking in and the guy had like semi-long hair, like not quite tie-backable kind of hair, you know, like kind of like to the chin,
like
almost chin level
thing.
I mean, now it'd be a man bun. But I remember walking in and being like, what do you want? I'm like, I think hair like yours, mate. Anyway, long story short.
Surely the question... The answer to that question is hair that will get me laid. But anyway, go on.
Well, he looked like he was getting some, all right? And hipster hairdresser. So he's, what are you into? I'm into music. Oh, what kind of stuff do you like? And because I'm like trying not to be a hippie rocker that can't get laid, and I bought a few cheap Motown vinyl recently. I was like, yeah, I'm quite into soul, man. I'm quite into soul. And it's like, oh, really? Soul, yeah. I saw this great documentary about Scott Walker last night. He's like, you know, he's the Bulls or whatever. Do you know Scott Walker? And I was just like, I'm thinking like Otis Redding and, you know, Wilson Pickett. And I'm nodding along going, yeah, mate, he's all right or whatever. So as well as being embarrassed about, you know, getting his haircut, I didn't know who Scott Walker was. And to my discredit, I mean, I guess his albums weren't cheap in FOP because had they been £3 to £5 in FOP, I would have picked one up. And then I forgot all about it till a few weeks ago. You reminded me of my imbecility and my ill-fated haircut, which I will add, when I took it to the meeting of People and Planet Society the next day, I was so ashamed I had to put a baseball cap on backwards to hide it.
Now I have 4 things. Let's see if at my age I can remember them all. Number 1 is to say, on the great you're not going to get laidometer, I think a backwards baseball cap is probably, like, that's a higher bar to cross than even a ponytail, right? You're going to struggle even more.
Sure.
My number 2 question was, of course, did the bob haircut eventually work, or was the laidometer still about the same, whether it was long hair or short hair, which tells us something about how relevant the hair was.
I would have to look at the chronology, but I think it did get me laid.
Okay. Number 2 was, what on earth is FOP?
Oh, the music shop in the UK. I don't know if it's existed. There were 6 in the country when I was there, mainly in student towns, and they sold a lot of records for £3 to £5. So I bought about 50 Blue Note albums for £3 on CD. Okay. I spent a lot of my life in FOP. I believe it still exists. Nottingham was a big...
Okay. And the last question, and then we will get on to Scott Walker 2.
Yeah.
I also had... You've never seen me with a ponytail, have you? Because I'd already cut it off by the time we met. So
because we didn't meet until I was 16.
I was 16, and exactly.
You were an adult, yeah.
But having had long hair for the formative kind of 15 to 25-ness, I am therefore just shit scared of hairdressers and don't know what to do in a barbershop because I literally don't have a clue. I just tied it back with a ponytail for so long. So when I walk in, even now as a 53-year-old, they go, "What do you want, mate?" I go, I don't know. Just do like a number 2 and whatever happens. Because I literally have no idea what to do in a barbershop.
That is so funny. So yeah, so for listeners that obviously will be really interested in this riveting fact, I had long hair for about 7 years in my kind of, I guess, early to late 30s, and it's really suited many of the rock and roll bands I played in. But about a year ago, I shaved it off.
You did?
To number 0 after raising quite a substantial amount of money for a school for autistic children in Nepal. And then it obviously starts to grow back. So I've kind of spent the last year working out that very thing. So the first time it had got to the point where it was no longer ruly, but I'd had it shaved and just left it to grow. And I did go in and they asked what I wanted. And I said exactly what I said when I was about 16, which was number 3 round back in size and short on top.
That's it. That's the line.
And if it's summer, number 2.
Right. Fascinating, though I'm sure it is for our listeners to now do some kind of spreadsheet of the years in which Rob Garrett had long hair and the years in which he didn't. Let us get on to Scott Walker and Scott Walker 2. Right, so Scott Walker, my goodness, he's quite an enigma, known as this kind of niche-fetid artist. To introduce him very quickly before we get into the music, everybody that knows of him knows these things. He had the whole teenage Walker Brothers thing going on. He was a teen idol.
Didn't know that.
Oh, okay. So he was in Scott Walker and the Walker Brothers, or the Walker Brothers, who are an odd teenage band in that they were Americans that were bigger in... At one point, I think they outsold the Beatles in the UK, but weren't that big in America. And the other side about them is... Yes.
But that crude.
I know. I thought
exactly. He was like Tom Jones, only way better.
Yeah.
Who I recently saw in concert, incidentally, which we'll come to later.
He was born in Hamilton, Ohio, and settled in California. The Walker Brothers were not brothers. One of their members, and they weren't even called Walker, one of their members, John Mowers, who changed his name to John Walker for stage reasons, they became the Walker Brothers for that reason. But anyway, they were the big team. And when you say, the Walker Brothers, people generally do know the big kind of hits like The Sun Ain't Gonna Shine Anymore and Make It Easy on Yourself.
Oh, I know that one.
They split up through tension and musical differences. That's quite a sort of dark ages bit of their history, but it wouldn't be a surprise because what's whispered is Scott Walker was unhappy with the kind of simplicity of the music and wanted to expand his musical horizons. And therefore, at the height of his popularity, released these 5 albums: Scott Walker 1, 2, 3, 4, and Scott Walker sings songs from his TV series. And that's kind of his classical period, the kind of zenith of why he's big and famous and why artists from Thom Yorke to Jarvis Cocker...
I think it's pronounced Tom. I know he, is very adamant about the H, but it's still Tom.
Oh, is it really? Oh, I learned something.
Wait, he wasn't born Thomas Yorke, was he?
I don't know. I always assumed he was sort of Scandinavian and was therefore called Thom or something.
Just because he's blinky and scared of the sun does not make him Scandinavian, you... Prejudiced soul, you.
It's a necessary but not sufficient condition to be Scandinavian. Neil Hannon, loads of people, Nick Cave, they all cite him as a massive influence, and he's kind of almost the cool rock star's cool rock star, and rock star's probably the wrong word, but the cool musos. Good.
And hairdressers as well.
Exactly, and hairdressers,
With fuck me haircuts.
With fuck me haircuts, yeah, exactly. So we'll come on to what he did after that. But these 4 or 5 albums, I say 4 or 5 because really Scott 1, 2, 3, 4, because it's really weird. He was massively famous while he was doing these 4 albums. He had a TV series, hence the Scott Walker Sing Songs of TV series.
Okay. Wait, so there's 1, 2, 3, 4, and basically a 5.
Yeah.
From the tiny bit of Googling that I've done, it seems like his music just gets weirder and more interesting. Actually, he has more original material as he goes on.
Sure.
So I'm always disappointed you picked 2, not 4. What was it about this one? why are you pegging me as a 2 guy, Dave?
I really thought about it, and you're right, because broadly those 4 albums have kind of 3 kinds of stuff in them. There is his own compositions, and I use the word composition advisedly, rather than just songs. There are the kind of stuff he was probably more known for, these kind of interpretations of pop, classic ballads, Broadway hit stuff. And then there's all the Jaques Brell stuff, like a lot of interpretation of this, of Jaques Brell, the dark comic Belgian songwriter. And as you go through them, kind of 1 and 2 have quite a mix of that. Three's actually a little bit more of his stuff, and the ballads and things are shoved to the end. By the time you get to 4, it is all his own stuff. You're absolutely right. I knew you didn't know him at all, but I thought you might as well get the whole lot, because this is like Scott2 for me is like the zenith. It's got everything about him in it. And it's also, quite interestingly, it's where he really started to lose his audience because of, we'll come on to kind of the dark, some of the weirdness.
Because it's fucking balmy.
Because it's fucking balmy, yeah, exactly, in a nutshell. But it's also his biggest selling album. So I think that's quite interesting as well. Yeah, it's his biggest selling. So it's like, whoa, probably on the strength of, you can probably, a couple of tracks, you go, yeah, big pop hits there for the album. But after this, like 3 and 4 especially really didn't sell, and then we can go on to the future. But if I have sucked you into listening to Scott 4, then my job's done.
Hey,
so that's good.
hey.
Yay, so I was right to do so. So,
that is... Yeah, we haven't gone there yet.
That is a very, very quick walk through the enigma that is Scott Walker. The first question has to be, you have now listened to Scott Walker 2. What did you think?
Oh my God, Dave. In the brief time we've been doing this podcast, you have not pitched me an album that is anywhere near this overblown,
Yay!
this ridiculous, this dated, this twee, this melodramatic, and this sublime. This is like
sublime, exactly.
by a country mile the strongest thing you pitched me. It's like, where has this guy been my whole life? I feel genuinely stupid, and that's why I told the boring story about the hairdresser, because I really feel like that was life telling me to check out someone called Scott Walker, and I took a left turn at the wrong time, because this is phenomenal. I mean, in all its silliness and syrupiness and darkness, and it's like, oh my God, it makes the Doors look like the Muppets, you know what I mean? Like, and that's the thing that I think I really love, because it's kind of so clearly caught between errors. On the one hand, this is what, 1968?
This is 1968, yeah. Amazingly.
So, in one sense, it feels like it should have been made 10 years ago in terms of the production and the strings and the ornamentation and this kind of framing of the big croning vocal, and compared with, you've already had Lucy in the Sky and Sgt. Pepper's, all this stuff. It's like so retrograde. It's parents' music. But on the other hand, you've got someone talking about whores and gonorrhea and Naked and the Dead, and like going somewhere the Beatles never effing went. So
not quite. No.
It's thrilling in its antiquity and its forward thinkingness at the same time. It just feels like a real product of its time, an album that could only be made in 1968, where you could just about get away with saying those things, yet somehow the producer or whoever's in charge of choosing the material and more importantly the arrangements and the whole package is probably got one foot in another era, and it's as a result it's kind of fantastic, because it's just this complete cluster fluff of different things. And as you say, you've got proper cheesy Sinatra crooning, and if it was an album of that, it might have made me smile.
Yeah,
it wasn't gonna earn a place in my
we wouldn't be talking about it if it was just those things.
Yeah, it's got some pretty poppy bits, but then it's got, oh my God, all this imagery and the way he delivers it. I mean, if we're gonna start at the top, Next, that might be, yeah. I haven't had the sufficient time to really sit down and pick apart what's happening with all of this, because it feels like we're in this distinct moment in history where it's like post-beatniks, French New Wave has happened, language and sexuality and opinions have been somewhat liberalized, but as I say, the framing is, it still feels like it's from
1956.
It's fantastic.
Wow. Well, I'm glad it's hooked you, because that's all the things I feel about it. And you said it much better than I could. I still don't know what to say about Scott Walker, because he's a complete enigma and it shouldn't work, but it does. The best quote I've found, and it's not that great, is, it's not rock, but it's cool. It's just like, what is it?
I don't care. I kind of think it's so uncool.
Yeah.
Just now when I was blaring it really loud, thinking my neighbours are hearing this, and it's like, That's the fault. I'm like, they must think, what, but I don't care. This is, like I say, it's an Archer quality, but it's got this darkness, it's got this noir element.
Yeah.
I almost feel like a film soundtrack going on. I guess what I'm really intrigued in, as you said, there is a mix of material, and some of it is so sucker punch, and I think the back end is maybe loaded a little bit too ballad heavy, and I'm intrigued about the mix of material. So do you want to walk me through it?
Okay, my ideal in getting into this, and dark baroque pop is the other word other way of describing it. Classic. Next, I absolutely appreciate what is a showstopper, but for me, the absolute showstopper that I can play anytime, anywhere is the opening track, Jackie. What a
Oh
tune.
my god!
What a
straight
tune.
out the gate, the diddler. It's like I don't know if it's a laugh or cry.
Name me a better album opener.
I've literally written that in my notes. I have a friend who's planning a track one side one night where we all bring like five best track one side ones, and I'm like, everything I planned. Yeah. Screw you, brown sugar. Like, This is definitely another. I mean, I've said this about a few songs on the album. Yeah. It's like an opera in a single song. Like in less than 3 minutes, it goes through everything. Like, phony virgins, inappropriate racial slurs, bordellos, stupid ass way, getting drunk twice. It's like a Christmas song on steroids. It's oh my god!
It's every single exciting song you've ever heard in your life compressed into 3 minutes, and there's not a guitar on it either. It's just this most thrilling, visceral thing you've ever heard, and it's a show tune. It's incredible.
And it's officially my new... I don't really have a karaoke song, but now I do. To my shame, it was probably Dancing in the Dark, because I feel like a girl that get up in the evening. I've only got to sing one note most of the time. This, I don't care. I'm gonna belt Jackie in whatever key I want, because this is like, my god.
And I've been listening to this for long enough now, because I love it and I love it. And I've actually just during the last few weeks come to go, oh god, do you know he can really? I mean, I knew he could sing, but what a sing! I mean, as listeners to this know, I knock out tunes in a covers band. I actually wouldn't attempt this because I just couldn't. It's such a brilliant vocal. Oh my god! The notes he's hitting and that rich baritone at the same time, the orchestra going wild, and the lyrics, as you say, is like decked out like a Christmas tree and through pink elephants I'd see it. And my favourite bit is when it just goes, my name would then be Handsome Jack and I'd sell boats of opium. Whiskey that came from Twickenham. What? They just thrown Twickenham because it vaguely rhymes with the opium, but it still works. It doesn't matter because the whole thing is just about this fantasy about escaping. It's just escaping wildly. Get out there and live your best wild life with opium dems and all of that wildness. And the music just does that 100%. I defy anybody to play this and not want to sack in their job and go kayaking down the Andes or do any wild thing you ever wanted to do.
I am 100% on board, but okay, you outlined at the outset that there were 3 or 4 different ways that material came together. So what camp did this song fall into?
So this is Jaques Brell.
Oh, so it's a direct translation. Have you heard the original?
I have not, no. Why have I never done that? Because I just never got over this. I mean, how can anything be more perfect than Jackie by Scott Walker?
Okay. So this is how we're going to carve it up. What are the other Jaques Brell songs?
Okay, so the other Jaques Brell, as you've already mentioned, is next. The next one is next.
F me, you mean? Okay, so the 2 best songs on the album are evidently Jaques Brell songs. He's literally stealing.
And you say that, but certainly my first 10 years of listening to this album, his compositions have grown on me massively as time has gone by. But next is certainly one of the absolute, strongest songs on the album. What a tune.
It's amazing, just the monologue. It's like naked as sin, naked body, army whorehouse. Not so tragic the sky would fall. Slapped asses, gonorrhoea, whiskey and mug, naked and dead. Under 3 minutes. It's just like that is the journey. That is. And obviously I'm aware what the narrative is painting. The idea that he's like paid for by the army. Did Jaques Brell write his own material? Was he dropped off at an army whorehouse? Did this all happen to him, or is this?
Apparently no. He has been asked, but no. He did do national service, but he never went to an army whorehouse. This is all from his own imagination. And my God, when you get over the kind of slightly comic is the wrong word for it, but the original stuff, it is a bit with being slapped on the arse and all that kind of stuff. I tell you, the kicker is the very last verse. One day I'll cut my legs off and burn myself alive. Anything. I'll do anything to get out of line just to survive. It's like, whoa. It was kind of like this mad thing, and then it's like, oh yeah, no, that's a really serious point at the end. This guy's never escaped that. It's trauma, it's not, we now know as PTSD, it's childhood trauma, it's an awful thing that's happened to him and everybody in the line and the prostitutes themselves. It's a terrible thing, and it makes it very, very clear at the end, at the same time dressed up in this amazing, again, show-stopping tune.
But at the same time, it starts with this kind of like Morricone kind of like cartoon intro. The strings going next. You think it's like Charles Dickens kind of give me more kind of thing. It only unfolds itself as this insanely dark portrait. Actually, that's a good point. Is this the first mention of gonorrhea in a UK pop song? Probably.
And remember, this is at the height of his popularity.
I feel like many people didn't know what gonorrhea was.
Wow, the pill had been invented, so they would have been finding out pretty quickly. But and remember, this is the height of his teen pop idleness. He's and this is his biggest seller, probably because when Jackie was the single. Which had some dodgy, but people are taking this home, and suddenly, I swear on the wet hair of my first case of gonorrhea, coming out your speakers in 1968. What a thing! Are you aware of the very famous cover of this?
No.
So I first came across this song. Do you know the Sensational Alex Harvey Band?
They sound shite because of the sensational part. I mean, like who says that?
There are bars you can't walk into now in Scotland. They're a big rock, hard rock, and this was like their big song was a cover of this. Yeah, so this is the song that's gone on to have a life of its own beyond Scott Walker. In fact,
it sounds like it had quite a life before Scott Walker. Let's just for a second acknowledge that the two songs we love most did already exist.
You love most.
Oh, okay. Well, let's finish the theme. What are the other Brells on this record? So,
the last and final Brell song is track 9, The Girls and the Dogs.
Oh my god, that's another one that... Yeah, that... I don't know what to make of that. I mean...
So, I think it's a misstep on the album, and I'll come on to the flow of the album as well, but the album gets darker and darker and darker, and almost more soulful in a ballady type way. And it's almost like somebody said, you need to throw on this more comic song in between the kind of Plastic Palace people and then the crooning of Wait Until Dark, which I'll come on to how dark that is in a moment. And then you got Windows of the World, The Bridge. These are all quite... The side 2 is pretty much all kind of quite dark and I keep just using the word dark. And you've just thrown this in to line it up. And there's that reason I'm not quite sure it's needed. And secondly, it's funny because it's that thing about, dogs are a man best friend because actually women are terrible to men itself, not mankind, but men. But we kick the dogs out at the end because eventually, if girls are just a little bit nice to us, we kick the dogs out. But it's maybe hasn't quite, it feels a little bit uncomfortable, some of the things that it says about what girls do. That, I don't think it's quite survived the passage of time in terms of gender equality, basically, and just not being really snide and horrible about women, which it kind of is. So I just think it slightly crosses that uncomfortableness threshold as well, and it's a bit unnecessary. It's a bit of a cheap gag. So actually, although probably 20 years ago I was like, yeah, what a great little happy song that's funny, now I'm like, I sometimes skip over it because I don't think it fits the mood of the album.
Fair enough. So
and it's a bit uncomfortable. Yeah.
So Dave, that was him aping Jaques Brell. You're saying he emerged very much as a singer-songwriter in his own right by Scott 3, Scott 4. Which are his on this one?
So the first one of his on this, track 4, The Amorous Humphrey Plug.
Oh my gosh, that is actually my second or third favourite song on the album.
Yeah, many people's favourite song on the album. So remember, he is a teen idol. This is a song that takes you from the domestic, hello, Mr. Big Shot, probably his partner wife saying that you've come in like a stranger, you've had a night out with the boys again. And then it comes on to him, and he's out of this world. He's in another world. He's escaped from this. And there's probably themes of his escapism from the commercial teen thing. But, I've become a giant. I fill every street. I dwarf the rooftops. And then it's basically really dark and horrible and sordid because he pretty obviously ends up in a kind of seedy, whorehouse in Channing Way. There's that pun of in Channing Way, enchanting way, which is lovely. And then it just becomes this kind of total escaped. He's escaped, but he's quite sad for escaping. To die of kisses, ecstasies and charms. Pavements of poets will write that I died in 9 angels' arms. 50s big sound ballad going on while all this mad stuff is lyrically is happening about this man that's escaped the kitchen sink to on one level it's a whorehouse, on the other level it's this fantasy of escape, which it clearly isn't.
I think I completely misunderstood because the whole, hello, Mr. Bug shot, I went to the park on a tiring day, you're a stranger. The TV is swallowing me. I thought this was like a housewife.
I think many people think that first verse is him saying that. And then they think the narrative moves from first person to the man.
I'll make the obvious link here because the reason you recommending this album was a direct response to Suede's Dogman Star.
Yeah.
Certain moments on this album I have really, really, really felt that Mr. Anderson was channeling this.
Yes.
Definitely. But just that embodying characters and making them kind of bleak but empathetic. This song especially, I really, really felt that Brett played this a bunch. You could just tell, and yeah, I think Plastic People too, and a few others. But
yeah, no, having done Dogman Star, not quite appreciating it more and more, and then listening to this album, I've started.
It makes sense. It makes sense,
yeah,
right?
And I've started to appreciate Dogman Star more through listening to this album because I feel there's a kind of narrative about yes, you could throw at Scott Walker, oh, you're a teen idol, you still do ballads and you're trying to do something deeper and it works, or what's going on and is it clashed or not? And
which
the same
is
thing with Dogman Star.
You're not,
exactly. Exactly what you said.
Doing.
They're not just, and I've got that now, they're not just another middle of the road Britpop band.
If anything, it reinforces my appreciation of both the source and the interpretation.
Yeah, absolutely. So, that was the first one on the Amorous Humphrey Plug, first one on the album that he wrote. Absolutely love it. And it is one of those, it's a Scott Walker fan, like there are people on the internet will say, I listen to this song every day. Like it's part of their life. Because it's that amazing escapism and contrast, and musically it's all over the place, but wonderful as well. So, brilliant, I think. The next one of his is...
Not to Girls in the Streets.
Yeah, The Girls from the Streets.
Oh my God! So he wrote some good ones. There's more.
Yeah. Oh boy, yeah.
There's more. There's more arse slapping in this though.
Well, it's almost like it's almost like this is the brothel trilogy. You've got the Amorous Humphrey Plug going off, escaping domesticity to a whorehouse. We think there's Next, very much definitely that, and then The Girls in the Street. My God, what? So it's almost like, has he put that in there to contrast from Next? Because Next is very much the Tomcat, the punter's experience, if that's the right terms. The Girls in the Street is very much you certainly it's certainly in sympathy with those girls themselves. Yes, you're being dragged. There's a sense of being dragged to it. But there's a real kind of understanding that this is not a pleasant thing. Even though, I love that musically, it's amazing. This starts off with those dum da dum da,
yes,
and then it somehow manages to get this lighter tone with these swirly bits coming in, and it's all kind of waltzy and lovely again. But the lyrics are just still. Give us your lips, give us your thighs, give us your sad, devouring eyes, cascading tears for every heartbeat. Tonight we'll sleep on the girls on the streets. He couldn't be any clearer that his sympathies are with the girls on the streets, and this is a bad thing going on. Captured in this, massively dramatic and wonderfully nuanced piece of. This is why I say composer, not songwriter. Piece of music.
So I feel almost bad saying this, but I'd already decided that yes. The opener is really strong, but basically it was 4, 5, 6 that to me was like the destroyer. And, the scene is set with Jackie. But then 4, 5, 6, it is like whatever the boxing term for a 3 punches. And you're just left winded. I hope the rest of the record would be as deep and visceral and literary and everything else. But yeah, those 3 songs I've kind of now, having sat through the second half a few times, it's the strength of 4, 5, 6 that make me think this is a 5-star album, not a 4-star album, to be honest.
I don't think I could disagree with you. It's certainly the heart of it. And, he wrote 2 out of those 3. So if that alone has whetted your appetite for Scott Walker's 1, 3, 4, and all the other stuff. And then the next one, because actually for me, I'm going to make an argument that it's 4, 5, 6, and 7, or track 1, side 2, as it would have been. Plastic Palace People could be argued to be the real hub of this album. And he wrote that as well, Plastic Palace People. And actually, that's often my go-to after Jackie. I don't know what you thought to Plastic Palace People.
Honestly, I had this annoying thing where you're listening to it on headphones, and I kept thinking like something had made the song start again, because it keeps doing the stringy bit and then doing the guitar bit, and I kept thinking the song was starting over. And as a result, it feels a bit like a maddening loop.
Okay, fair enough.
It is twice the length of most of the songs on this album. I like it. I like it when it gets a bit psyche.
Okay, fair enough. It is a suite. I mean, what a suite of stuff. And you're right. It sort of does the 3 suites and then it does it again. But it's not like Oasis just repeating the the vocals again for this. It's the song, but it's the same song twice.
For the record, is it Supersonic or Live Forever that's got exactly the same first and second?
No, it's Rock and Roll Star. Believe me, because I've sung in a covers band. Rock and Roll Star. It goes first chorus, and it's literally the same song again. It's like, it's the most. Anyway, let's not go there because it's just dull and boring. And this is wonderful. Plastic Palace People, I love. It's a harder listen than the rest of it. And it probably does speak a bit more to his more avant-garde stuff later on in his career, which we'll come on to. But that was his 3rd one. And then blow me, his 4th one, different again. Do you want to guess which one it is?
The Bridge?
Yes, it is track 11. The Bridge. Very different again, and I absolutely love The Bridge. I think it's standard. It's more to the kind of ballady stuff that's going on, but I find he's found the perfect mix of the lyrical sentiment and the music again. So it's this kind of idea that the bridge is stable, all this stuff is going around it, but the bridge is always there. And mostly being Scott Walker, what's going on around it is not nice. The way he sings it, I don't know who Madeline is, but oh God, he clearly loves her an awful lot. Some of the her sailors stained her cobblestones with wine and piss and death desire, and sometimes blood for Madeleine. Whoa. Okay, we're not dialing down the darkness, are we, Scott, for the closing track? And yet there's still this kind of beauty to it and mournfulness. So I actually think the bridge is up there with the other 3 of his compositions on this album.
I'm kind of worried about what it's actually about because listening to this album on speed dial, as it were, going about my day. I have an ex-colleague called Madeline who I heard the lyric and just sent it to them out of the blue, and then I suddenly thought, what the fuck is this song about?
What have I just sent her? Yeah.
Because her reply was, Rob, are you okay? So, So sorry, Matt. Sorry, Maddie, if you're listening. But and then I thought, bridge is about suicide. What is going on here?
It's either about a bridge that's there for all time and things happen, including this doomed romance, possibly, or because there's then the line at the end, before the bottle dulled my eyes, and maybe so I couldn't stand, I'd overact and play the clown when Madeline would cry. So, or it's about a lost love that he's lost through alcoholism, which actually, now come to think of it, is more likely because of the theme of the very last song of the track, which comes after this.
So that's the Brells.
3 Brells, 4 Engels. They are by a country mile the 7 strongest tracks on the album.
Engels
is Scott Walker. Sorry, Engels is when it says Engels on the credits, it means him.
Because you explained how his bandmate took the name Walker, but he also wasn't Walker.
Nobody was Walker. Nobody in the Walker brothers was a brother or called Walker originally. He was born Noel Scott Engel.
Okay. Then we're left with 5 songs, which I presume are either written for him or interpretations of existing material?
Yeah, no, none of them written for him. After these 4 or 5 strong albums, I mean, what he then did in the 70s was get drunk and make a living sort of recording essentially other people's songs like this. And the Walker Brothers themselves certainly did some interpretations of lots of other people's songs. He's known as a balladeer, and with that voice, I mean, that's the thing with him. What do you do with that voice? He is an incredible singer. If he was just a singer, he could just be a Tom Jones. You know, I don't think Tom Jones ever really wrote any of his own stuff because he had a voice better than there's heresy. Better than Tom Jones, right? Do we think? I think so. It's got an amazing tone to it that he just.
I mean, it touches me more.
Bring out.
But is that the material? Yeah. Is that the material? I don't know.
Could be. Okay, so the first one we get Best of Both Worlds.
I've got I've got a soft spot for Tom Jones because I interviewed him not long ago, innit? He was very charming with that Welsh accent, you know.
He's a very lovely man. I'll have nothing said against him, but maybe his voice isn't as good as Scott Walker's. Maybe he's the second best crooner in history rather than the first.
We'd need some AI software to analyse their respective peaks and troughs, I'm afraid.
So I like the Best of Both Worlds. After Jackie, you need a bit of a come down, and it's certainly that. It's a lost lover whose lover has gone off. So this was written by Mark London and Don Black, and I think the most famous cover before this was by Lulu of all people.
Really,
from the female perspective, yeah, and he sings it from the male perspective, and I think makes it a little bit darker sounding than Lulu's. But I tell you, I just
why? Because we should have.
No. I just think I don't know how he does it musically, but he manages to make it sound.
I think it's more positive that the woman is the one choosing. I prefer this interpretation.
Oh yeah. No, there's. Yeah,
I think Lulu's version sounds very conventional. Like you got to make up your mind before these pretty girls throwing themselves at you. You know.
No, yeah, you can say
you're the rich male humdinger. You know, but I like this idea that he is the broken man, where you're going, hey, girl, like, come on.
Sure. Yeah. No, I like that. I like that interpretation. Fantastic. Yeah. The thing I most like about this, it makes me smile every time, is have you picked up on how he pronounces the word enjoy in this song?
Yes.
Just kind of. Yes.
I know. It took me several. I only really grasped it about half an hour ago. What he was actually saying.
I know. And you're like, why have you? I still to this day don't know why did you do it. Enjoy. You got to listen to it if you have never heard it. Why you enjoy the? But he clearly just decided to do that on the day of the recording. Do you think the producers all went, Scott, what are you doing there? It's not how you say enjoy. That's not. But it makes me smile every time.
I think this is a ruddy banger, and I think it moves me as much as the 7 songs we discussed, because it is such a heartbreaking kind of. It is so cheesy. It's like Sinatra-y almost, but because it's about a breakup, not about I love you so much, and because it's like nestled between the Jackies and the amorous Humphrey Pigs, it feels somehow darker.
And I think that's true of all the covers, actually, with the exception of perhaps the next one, which is Black Sheep Boy, written by Tim Hardin. Tim Hardin, really? Who wrote... Yeah, it's off Tim Hardin 2. There's another artist
tell our
with
readers,
just numbers.
Listeners.
And wrote If I Were a Carpenter, obviously, most famously. And this comes off the same album as that. And I got this really on one level doesn't fit, but on the other level, I actually just quite really enjoy, before we get into the heart of the album, which, as we've said, is 457 or 4567. Sorry, 456 or 4567. You've almost got this mini EP where you go, okay, Scott, yeah, you can do everything, can't you? You can do Jackie. You've just nailed that vocally amazingly. You've given us this ballad. You've nailed that. Oh, and now you're doing country pop rock. And you know what? You've not overdone it. You could have done a really bad kind of oversold it, and you've nailed that as well. You've done that. You've done it really nicely, and it obviously resonates with his feelings of being a black sheep, and he should have been carried on the Teen Idol thing and escaping from that world, and that possibly is why it's on there as well. But I just like the fact it's thrown in there as a kind of, you've used the term palate cleanser a lot before the big heart of the album, and it really just kind of goes, look what the fuck I can do as a vocalist in my first 3 songs.
Okay, first of all, palate cleanser. For palate cleanser, you're gonna critique me on air for my,
No, I'm adopting it. Flattery. Flattery is the best form of imitation.
I would completely agree. I mean, I think by a country mile, it's weaker than the other 5 songs on this side. But as you say, as a quartet, from Jackie to a bit like Best of Both Worlds is kind of propped up on the gravity of Jackie.
Yeah.
And then I kind of feel like this is like, well, it's a bit silly, but you kind of almost need it, as you say before. Hello, Mr. Big Shot. It kind of, and I think that's why this is kind of like as a side one, it's, apart from Is This It, or Appetite for the Jungle, or maybe Sticky Fingers. It's, it's
yeah.
Can you think of a better one? Like.
We'll come to side 2, but as a side... Okay, so just that side... Here's a side 1. Jackie, Best of Both Worlds, Black Sheep Boy, Amorous Humphrey Plug, Next, and The Girls from the Street. My God. I mean, that's
why you picked this for me, not because you think I'm stupid and I wouldn't like Scott2.
No, exactly not that. Exactly not that. It's because it's fucking awesome. That's why. Okay, so, and then as I say, so 70s starts with Plastic Palace People on side 2. And then we get another cover, Wait Until Dark. And you go, okay, we just had Plastic Palace People and we're about to have The Girls and the Dogs. Why have we just got this cover of it's a film soundtrack of Wait Until Dark? But, and I don't know whether I'm reading too much into this, but then you Google the film Wait Until Dark, and Wait Until Dark sounds, the song and that phrase sounds lovely, doesn't it? It's Wait Until Dark, love, and everything will be great between us because we're lovers in the dark, and that'll be all lovely. Nom, 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 nom. The film is this tense psychological murder crime thing, which builds to, I haven't seen it, but I've read about it, builds to, there's a blind lady that is being conned by these murderers and thieves, and the only way she gets escapes their clutches is by breaking all the lights and making it dark so that she's got the advantage because she's used to not being able to see. Otherwise, she's going to get murdered. Yeah, otherwise she's going to get murdered, and she almost does get murdered because someone opens the fridge and that gives them some light, but she pulls the plug on the light and the murderer ends up, I think, getting his head slammed against something in a brutal way, and it's all very tense and psychological. So you might think on another album, this is just a light little cover, Wait Until Dark. But in the context of the album, the context of the film, I don't think so. I think we're still in quite dark territory here, and it just turns the whole concept of Wait Until Dark on its head, because now I cannot listen to this song without having an image, even though I've never seen the film, of a scared blind lady being attacked but pulling it off because she makes them blind as well. Well done her. But that's where that bit of music is for me now in the context of this album.
I have nothing to add to that.
No, I said
you said enough. Okay, what about Windows of the World?
Well, and then you got Windows of the World, and that's Bacharach and David.
No way.
Yeah, Bacharach and David's only protest song, apparently. Originally done for Dionne Warwick, and Dionne Warwick's favourite Bacharach and David song, apparently. Lyrics by Hal David, because his son was off to Vietnam. So you've got these dark themes of everybody knows when boys grow into men, they start to wonder when their country will call. Everybody knows when men cannot be friends, their quarrel often ends where some have to die. Let the sun shine through. So it's not a happy song. It's a dark protest song or a dark war is awful song, and it fits within the theme of the album. And I know what you mean about side 2 being just a bit more disjointed and perhaps not, because it doesn't have the highs. But maybe you can't sustain those highs. And actually, it's a really lovely interpretation. And I love those. I don't even know what the instrument is. The ding ding dings going on. Beautiful, beautiful and heart rendering.
Yeah, and to your point, I think the second side is harder to talk about, and it lacks the dramatic highs, as you say. But I mean, perhaps this is how we like to consider records in those era. There were two sides, and often you use them to say different things and do different things, and put on side 1 or 2 by 2, depending on what you want to get. Yeah,
on your mood.
And I don't think that is in any way disparages the album, but I do think this is obviously a more meditative and harder to talk about section of song. Because then, of course, we reach Closer, Come Next Spring.
Yeah, which again, you go, okay, well, on the one level, you go, oh, there's been a lot of darkness in this album, and come next spring, it's all going to be okay. And actually, if you look at the film again, and this is why I referenced the bridge perhaps being about an alcoholic, etc. Come next spring, again, it's the theme tune, like Wait Until Dark, of a movie that's about an alcoholic who left his wife and daughter because he was an alcoholic, and it comes out in his daughter is mute, does not speak because of a car accident caused by him driving when he was drunk, which he never confessed to his then wife. He comes back 7 or 8 years later, and the whole movie is about him trying to heal his relationships. He confesses this to his wife. There's somebody else that wants to marry his wife, but it turns out he has a son he didn't know about. But basically, there is a happy ending to the movie. They do end up back together, and he maintains his sobriety, and he's able to recover from all of that awful alcoholism and 10 lost years, and the family is healed. So you can if the album needed an upbeat kind of on one level, it is an upbeat. It's Come Next String, everything's going to be fine anyway. But actually, the movie it references does the same thing. So you do get a nice.
I'm really glad to hear that. But you mentioned alcoholism, and I do feel like booze comes up as not just a character, but a very negative
booze and prostitutes
influence in I don't know, at least half the material probably. Is it safe to say that Scott Walker had a troubled life?
Well, he had a troubled 70s, and he's very private, so it's hard to know after that. So after 1, 2, 3, 4, and as I say, Scott 4 often thought of as best.
2, 4. What's wrong with 3?
Nothing wrong with 3. It's only in comparison to 2 and 4. It's great. There's plenty of good stuff on it. And 1 is very much like 2, just not quite as good, maybe. But 1 and 3 are still perfectly, they're like, what's wrong with, I don't know, it's a bit like saying, what's wrong with Rubber Soul? Because everyone talks about Sgt. Pepper's and
no,
Revolver,
fuck Sgt. Pepper's. But, Rubber Soul's the best.
I'm with you there, but do you know what I mean? It's like you can argue about it for days, and for whatever. Consensus is 2 and 4 are just the summits, but like Everest and K2, they're still pretty high, sort of thing. However, 4 bombed commercially, even though criticals down, a high point. After which point, he spent the 70s. I haven't got anything by him in the early 70s because, by all accounts, he was just knocking out crooner records, fulfilling contractual obligations. Just kind of falling into a hole. Then, surprise, surprise, the Walker Brothers reformed. And this is a hole in my knowledge because there are 2 or 3 Walker Brother albums from the 70s, which apparently are all right. They're critically were okay, but they just didn't trouble the charts. They were, I guess, at that point, people knew them. They were, the crooners from the 60s. It's way too, it was too early for a revival, just didn't trouble anybody. But slowly, what happened in the across the 80s was all of these cool people start to go, Scott Walker, amazing.
What kind of cool people?
Probably most prominently, there was David Bowie, Mark Arman, Soft Cell, because he went on to do quite a ballady career thing. But Julian Cope from the Teardrop Explodes. Have you ever come across Teardrop Explodes? They were a fairly fated, sort of rocky, little bit folk rock band in the 80s. World Shut Your Mouth.
This is where the age difference becomes really apparent. Solo.
Yeah, okay. Anyway, but Julian Cope did a compilation. He released his own compilation of Scott Walker called Fire Escape in the Sky, The Godlike Genius of Scott Walker. And many people have said that's not hyperbole enough, but that got people into him again. So he slowly kind of just grew to the extent that he was asked to do a South Bank Meltdown festival, curate one, which he did. Yeah.
A bit like David Bowie did when he picked Suede, which is why I went to London and met you. We're doing this podcast.
Exactly. And Jarvis Cocker actually did the award ceremony of the Q Lifetime thing in 2000. So by that time, he was like, everybody was name checking him, as I say, from Jarvis Cocker to Cocker to Tom York, Neil Hannon from the Divine Comedy, Nick Cave, Goldfrapp. I don't know Goldfrapp, but they named it as well. So everybody just started to go, yeah, he's brilliant. To the extent that he started to record again. And what's lovely is you don't have to work too hard because there's really only 4 or 5 albums. So in 1984, he released an album called Climate of Hunter, which I love. And it's weird. It's not quite out there avant-garde as the 3 next ones, which I'll come to. It's this weird hodgepodge again, little bit it's got to. Mark Knopfler's on it, oddly, but it certainly suffers a bit from 80s production stuff. But we Neil Young Landing on Water. It's in that. Is it a mistake? But actually, the critics quite loved it as well. Didn't necessarily. None of these now troubled the charts necessarily, but they cemented his kind of image as this, godfather of Baroque pop stuff already, but then he just went and did avant-garde stuff. So he did an album in 1984. The next one wasn't for 10 years, Tilt, and the next proper album after that was 2006, so it's 10 years later, The Drift, and then the next one after that, 2012, Bish Bosh. So really, there was just these four increasingly more avant-garde albums, 84, 95, 2006, 2012. Just to say, interspersed with that, he did some soundtracks for some films and did in 2014, and bear in mind he died in 2019 at the age of 76, so he was 71. He did an album with drone metal stars Sun O, who I'd never heard of, called Soused. And I've never heard that album, but whether it's like Lou Reed's Lulu with Metallica, I don't know. But he certainly was experimenting all the way into the 70s, for which, again, is part of his myth.
Okay, but I should start with Scott 4, then Scott 1, then Scott 3.
Yeah.
And then do the weird shit.
Yes, and then do the weird shit. That would be my recommendation. So I'm warm to my cockles, because the thing about this album is, it is one which you could listen to and go, actually, Dave, I don't get it. I hated it, whatever.
It's so dated, it's so silly, it's so over the top, it's so parent
it's
music.
Dated, silly, and over the top. All of those things are true, but it's still awesome, and I'm glad you appreciate the awesomeness of it, as well as other things. Where, in future, or even now, do you think this is the album you would be listening to?
So I didn't have a ready-made answer to this, but hearing you talk about those two film soundtrack songs and knowing the gravity and the imagery and the kind of gargoylist nature of a lot of the material made me really think that I wanted to be in like a, very old school, scary cinema, because it's so cinematic. And actually, I do have a particular cinema.
Yeah.
I do have a particular cinema in mind. The I believe it's now known as the Ace Hotel, but there's one in LA that's like this crazy cinema that was built by UA, which was basically the artists breaking away from their own studios. I think it's Charlie Chaplin and whoever else, but UA, when UA was Rio UA, and they built the cinema in downtown LA. I don't know the original title, but I went there to see Antonio Sanchez in concert, and it's just this crazy, like gargoyle-y, weird building. And I think hearing it, sitting in the pews of that, because it's almost like a church, blasted at you, would just be distinctly surreal. So that's my answer to your question.
Good answer.
So Dave,
much better than mine, but go on.
Where did you first encounter this album, and how has it shaped and been a comfort to your life?
Right, so oddly, and that's the amazing thing about it, when I first bought this album, when me and my lovely wife first moved to this house 15-ish years ago, and because Jackie is such a way number, I associate it with first one. We bought a new kitchen stereo because we bought a new house in the days when kitchen stereos had CD players, of course. And we put it on and danced around the kitchen, and it was all very romantic and happy. And I associate with doing DIY in this house that we built with our kids and that kind of stuff. Which, given now, I've listened to it more seriously, because at that time it was just very busy and surface level. But you can just about do that with this album. That's where I first encountered it. I have listened to it more now in late, slightly drunken train rides home from the commute. When I was working full-time in London, it was often on that hour journey home when I, had a couple of beers after work and just wanted to block everything out. Thank you very much. And the mirror of that now is actually, as you know, I now only have to commute into London one day a week. And I put Jackie on to cheer myself up as I get off the train at London Liverpool Street, and I'm going up the escalators. Even now I can think about it. And I then skip straight to, because I'm walking through London, and there's something about people when they're commuting at 8 o'clock in the morning in London. My God, they're dead behind the eyes. No one wants to be there. Everyone wants to escape. So I do the Amorous Humphrey plug, followed by Plastic Palace People, and Plastic Palace People especially, because everyone's trying to escape, but actually everybody there is living quite plastic lives. I listen to those two as I'm walking across London Bridge, and it just makes me feel better about life, and I'm not really here in this awful commute to London. So I'm afraid not a glamorous, dark LA cinema, but that is probably the best place to listen to it, not coming out of a train station in London.
Okay, that's wonderful for two reasons. Primarily because it sounds like it's an album you encountered later in life.
Yeah.
It's really great that you're showing that, and I actually think it's perfect soundtrack to everything you described, and I think it's wonderful that music that's that is the power of it, right? That it's still relevant and still describing the situation we encounter on our daily commute today. But anyway, what's gone?
So, Rob, I feel great that we've done Scott Walker. I was umming and ahhing about introducing. I'm really glad I have. So we've done Suede and we've done Scott Walker. Who are we doing next? What are you introducing? I can't wait. I don't know what it's going to be. I literally don't know what it's going to be, and I'm really excited. What's it going to be? What's it going to be? What's next?
Well, after that, I don't think I can even attempt to suggest anyone who, writes or sings songs with like chords and melodies and words or regular beats or anything like that. So I'm going to take us in a completely different direction. 10 years ago this month, an album came out that definitely changed how I listen to music today. And I'm really excited to share it with you. You're Dead by Flying Lotus.
Okay. Wow. I can tell you now the answer to the question we always asked, what did you know before this podcast question will be absolutely F all. I'm going to write that down. You're Dead, Flying Lotus. And Flying Lotus are the band.
Flying Lotus is a human who created the album.
Oh, okay. Wow. I have literally never heard of them. Them? He, she, them, their group, a band, an individual. I just don't know. We will find out the next episode. Thank you, everybody, for listening.